Chapter 3 October 14th, 1739. Jim was almost glad of the many chores he needed to do. They'd give him time to think. He ran his fingers over the beads, trying to come up with a plan to slip back into the forest and look for his knife. Already he'd fetched water, gathered eggs, shoveled the ashes from last night's fire into the pit where they'd be mixed with lime to fertilize the fields. Now he paused while sweeping the yard and peered at the chicken scratchings on the ground. He studied the scraped earth just as Aunt Winnie had done so many times. The early morning light revealed one jagged line with a clear hatch mark through it. That could signify a boundary crossed. But what boundary? And where? And how could that help him find his knife? If only he knew more. He had thought there'd be plenty of time to learn Aunt Winnie's teachings. She'd always been there, salving his whelps and burns, setting his broken bones, even sending breath down his windpipe after Master's sons had shut him in the smokehouse. And there were the stories. When he was hurting, sorrowful, or couldn't sleep, Aunt Winnie would tell him a story to take his mind off his troubles. As he got older, Jim noticed that the tales she chose often related to the problem he'd been worrying about. By the time he was 12, he could usually cipher the meaning behind the story. Except for the last one, the one she told him before he left Charlestown. It was the story of Brother Rabbit's quest. But what was its message? He thought of the ending and shuddered. Take care when you wander into the forest. You gonna sweep that dirt or eat it? Phaedra's voice gave Jim such a start that he dropped the palm leaf broom. He picked it back up and began sweeping again, brushing away any signs that might have been there. When you're done here, rake out the chicken coop, and then fetch more grass, Phaedra snapped. Jim started to point to the drying platform, heavy with strands already turned from green to brown, but let his arm drop. Maybe the chicken scratchings had been a favorable sign after all. Phaedra had just given him the excuse he needed to leave the fort. At the tree line, he hesitated, rubbing his sore back and shoulder. The forest was a maze of light and shadow. The damp, earthy smell of moss summoned memories of the night before. What if the creature still lurked nearby? He shrugged off the thought. Obias didn't come out in the daytime. Leaves rustled. He took a step backward. For the 10th time, he searched his memory for the moment when the comforting heft of the knife's handle slipped from his grasp. Nothing. That's when he heard the screams. His mouth went dry, but he ran forward, through the stand of palmetto and sweet gum, into the pines and deeper into the cool dark of the forest. As he drew nearer, the cries became louder and more urgent. Jim's spine prickled. Birds, that was what it was, and they sounded angry. Scores of crows blackened the tree limbs in the clearing. One after another they darted at something. Caw! 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 Their cries echoed like 100 barking scolds. Jim fought the urge to cover his ears. He craned his neck and searched the treetops for the cause of their fury. Then he saw the nest, high in the uppermost branches of a longleaf pine. A single feather drifted down, twirling slowly through the air and landing in the pine needles at his feet. He bent to pick it up. It was ivory-colored and soft, definitely not a crow's. He looked up again, and a ball of milky white feathers with 2 great eyes peeked over the side of the nest. A baby bird! The crow squawked angrily, taking turns flying over and pecking at the chick. A large crow landed on the nest. Jim watched in horror as it snatched at the fuzzy baby, lifting it by the stub of a wing. The chick let out a pitiful squeal. Shoo! Shoo! Jim yelled, waving his arms. But the crow paid him no mind. It lifted the baby bird into the air and shook it hard, then let it go. No! Jim ran forward, reaching out with both hands. But he was too late. The chick landed hard in a bed of needles. The poor thing couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. Compared to its body, the feet were enormous, with 4 toes that formed sharp talons. Atop its head, 2 tufts of ivory feathers rose above the rest. An owlet! Little fella never stood a chance. Jim's throat ached, and the wounds on his back started to throb again. The crows sailed off in a cloud of black, screeching their triumph. Crouching to get a better look, Jim touched the chick's wings. The feathers were light and soft as a whisper. The owlet's eyes opened wide. 2 fiery musket balls, glowing hot, glared from a face that seemed almost human. "You're alive!" Jim whispered. The owlet got to its feet and lowered its head, buff-colored feathers bristling. It hopped a couple of times. One of its stubby wings was bent at an odd angle. Jim gazed up at the nest, a good 30 feet above. A lone caw in the distance helped Jim make up his mind. Even if he could get the baby back up there, where were the big owls that could protect it? The crows would just come back and finish what they'd started. He reached out. "I'll take care of you." The owlet squeaked and nipped at his hand. Couldn't blame the little critter for being wary. "You don't have to worry," he said. "I swear I'll protect you, and I keep my promises." The owlet considered this for a moment, yellow eyes taking stock. Jim moved slowly, taking off his shirt and gently wrapping it around the bird's body. The owlet struggled for a moment, then went still. In the distance, the blare of a horn called the militia to a drill. A slanting ray of sun sliced through the high branches, reflecting off a spot on one of the tree trunks across the clearing. Owlet safely tucked into the shirt, Jim walked over to investigate. As he got closer, the breath left his chest in a rush. There, driven deep into the rough bark of an ancient pine, was his knife. Later that evening, the people of Mosaic gathered around the circle. Jim held the owlet on a hickory plank placed across his knees to protect him from its sharp talons. A whittled splint and a scrap of cloth bound its injured wing. The owlet had not appreciated his doctoring at first, and Jim had the scratches to prove it. But finally the bird had seemed to accept it was for his own good. A pot of oyster stew bubbled on the fire. Would the owlet eat oysters? Jim had tried beetles, but the little bird didn't want anything to do with them. Maybe he just wasn't hungry. "There's your obeah, old man." Phaedra pointed her horn nail at the owlet. Shadrach squinted. "Did it hoot at you from this side or the other?" He pointed to the left and then to the right. Jim hesitated, not sure of the answer. "Whatever difference would that make?" Phaedra asked. Shadrach glared at her. "The creature foretells good or bad fortune, depending on what side he hoots from." Phaedra laughed so hard she almost dropped her basket. "I'd say the good luck side, then. He'll make for a tasty bite in tomorrow's stew." "You can't eat him," Jim said. "He's mine." "When an owl hoots, that means someone's going to die," Thomas said, "and we should kill it." "It's bad luck to kill an owl," Juba said. "All I know is that a bird's a wild critter," Phaedra said. "He don't belong here." "Don't you see?" Jim pleaded. "He'll die if I don't take care of him. He's my responsibility now." "That's nature's way." Phaedra pulled a frond tied on her weaving and snapped off the end. "Look at those eyes. Yellow as fever," she said. "An owl's a nasty bird. I don't care about your superstitions, but I know this. No good'll come of keeping it here." "I do not know about that." A French trader named Renard approached the fire. "When'd you get here?" Jim always looked forward to his visits. "Earlier today." Renard took a seat by the fire. "Long ride over from Alachua." His buckskin breeches, the same reddish brown as his long hair, were coated in dust. A fine hat made of deer hide sat on his head. Phaedra snorted and continued to work on her basket. "I've always admired the owl," he went on. "Swallows his prey whole and casts out the bones later. Seems a sensible way to go about it." He winked at Jim. "Owl feathers are valuable to some of the tribes up north. We can make a trade if you can keep him till he grows." "Won't he need them to fly?" Jim wondered. "I suppose he will. Maybe we'll shed a couple for you." Jim smiled. He admired the trader, the only one who didn't treat him like a child. Renard lived life on his own terms, answering to no one, coming and going as he chose. He crisscrossed the trails with his mule Celeste, stopping at villages along the way. In his worn leather pack he carried all manner of goods, gun flints, tobacco, fire steels, furs. Renard reached over as if to pull something from behind Jim's ear. An arrowhead! He handed it to Jim. May I keep it? Jim asked. Renard smiled and nodded. Seems that more people are here tonight, he said. Do you have new arrivals? What do you care? Phaedra asked. Don't you have enough trade? Renard laughed. A trader can never have enough trade. The owlet on Jim's lap raised its head, then settled back down on the plank. Wrong time. Domingo set a string of catfish on a rock by the fire. What do you mean? Jim asked. Owls are born in winter, and here it's only fall. Jim petted the soft down of the owlet's head. It squirmed and clacked its beak. Yaba, Domingo said. Does that mean owl in your language? Jim asked. Domingo's forehead wrinkled as though he searched his memory for the answer. Then he shook his head slowly. It means omen.